Okay, the clock on the wall says about 16:02. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Cape Cod Gateway Airport Commission. Today is Tuesday, 28 November 2023, and we've already stated the time. Have a roll call, please, Sue.
Certainly. Chairman Griffin,
Here.
Vice Chairman Flores,
Here.
Clerk Weil,
Here.
Commissioner Beerworth,
Here.
Commissioner Bailey,
Here.
Commissioner DeGeorge,
Here.
Commissioner Geo is not
He's
here.
inbound, but we don't know what time he'll arrive.
Very
He's
good.
incoming.
Incoming.
And the Armist Rep, Chris Greeley.
Here.
Very good. We have a quorum this evening.
Thank you very much. Would you all join me in the pledge, please? Pledge of allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have minutes of the previous meeting of 17 October. Everybody had a chance to review them and check them out. If there are no conflicts or corrections or additions or whatever, I'd like to take a motion to
Make a
accept.
motion to approve the minutes as written.
Second,
Second.
all in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you, that carries. Okay, folks, number 5, public comment. And there just might be some. We welcome you listening, and just give us a chance. Introduce yourself, please, tell us where you're from, and take up to maybe up to 3 minutes to tell us what's on your mind, and we'd be glad to hear it. Looks like first.
Hi, I'm Linda Bolliger from Hyannis Park Civic Association. And many of us are here because we just heard that you're bringing on another helicopter tour operator, and we'd like some information. So we're here really with a lot of questions. Hopefully you have a lot of answers for us.
With any luck, we will answer all of them.
Wonderful, thank you. We'll start with the first question, which is,
How do you want to do this?
A lot of our questions might be covered in the rationale. We can do that first,
That would
if
be
you'd
wonderful.
like.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, we think that what you'll hear will answer most of your questions.
sure.
So,
Will we have time to ask questions once we hear what you say, or will public comment be over and we can't say anything?
It's up to the commission chair.
that's a good question. Let's see what happens. If somebody has a question following it, we'll be happy to hear it.
Griff, do you have another question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, my name is Susan Gritta. I live in West Yarmouth. I'm representing the Wimbledon Shores Beach Association. I'm echoing Linda's concerns about the helicopter licensing or permitting. Lots of unanswered questions, and my question following up on after the presentation, will these questions and answers be put in writing? Will we have, is this part of the public record so we could actually look at the questions and answers after they're?
It is, so the meeting minutes will reflect the questions that have been asked.
In addition to what we're saying now, it will be questions and answered after the presentation. If we ask questions after the presentation, that will be part of the public record.
All meeting minutes will be
Okay,
part
is
of
it your
that.
intention to vote on this issue tonight,
Probably.
even though there may be some outstanding questions?
We'll see what. Let the meeting continue. By the way, everything you wanted to know about records and everything, it's also being videotaped.
Okay, good. All right.
And that goes on to the town. Go ahead, please.
This is a comment because you're gonna present us with your rationale.
Have your
but-
name, please.
Oh, sorry, Kate Gulliver from
Thank you.
Hyannis, resident of Hyannis. I am thoroughly against having helicopters going out of this airport because of the noise level, most particularly, that we will all suffer from. I don't know what rationale you could think of that this is a good idea, other than you're gonna tell us it's gonna make money. That does not do anything for the citizens of Barnstable for whom you should be working. And helicopters have a decibel level of from 80 to 120 decibels with an average of 106 decibels, which is harmful to your hearing. So, and it rattles houses and it rattles windows and it shakes the ground. And the idea that we're gonna have helicopter tourist flights over Hyannis and Cape Cod when we're concerned about noise pollution, air pollution, and the disruption of people's lives by this thing. For tourists, it doesn't make any sense. It does nothing for the citizens who live here. And I hope that you will vote against it, because the idea that it's gonna make money for the airport is not a sufficient reason to have it happen.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I guess just for fear that I don't get a chance to ask a question
Right.
later. I'm Heather Swenson. I live in Centerville on Lake Wequaquet. We are concerned about what is gonna be the minimal height that they will be allowed. Will they be allowed to fly over the lake, sightseeing around the lake? And it's a concern to those of us who live there. I know what it's like when either the med flight comes in or Coast Guard is flying over. It's very loud. I also, depending on weather or wind, we already have the noise from planes taking off, which I get at the airport, has been here long before I bought my home. But it is something that is noticeable to those of us who live on Lake Wequaquet. We're not actually that far from the airport, so our concern is what is going to be the impact of a helicopter sightseeing over our homes.
Thank you.
Terrible.
Kristen Turkelson, Centerville resident and recently elected to town council.
Congratulations.
Thank you, precinct 2. I'd like to know how many previous opportunities the public has had to make public comment on this pending contract. How is this new helicopter business going to fit in with the existing helicopter business that's already operating here in the town? It seems that the existing business is run carefully and responsibly by an individual, and it seems to meet the need already currently for that tour operation business. He reports that he has 51 trips so far this calendar year, and so it seems like there's not a high demand for helicopter tours above and beyond that. I also understand that the current operator essentially breaks even on his business. And how will this new helicopter business impact the current operator? Can you detail why you're bringing in more helicopter sightseeing, as it doesn't seem there's more of a requirement for that? The current operator is a reservation-only business. How will the new helicopter operator run his business? Will it be a walk-up service? How many potential flights a day? Does he have routes mapped out as part of the contract? Is the contract really just sightseeing or something more? Will he be flying passengers to and from the islands like a helicopter taxi service? Is there a need for a helicopter taxi service with Cape Air and the fast ferries doing that same trip? Will this helicopter be able to land in people's yards? Is he going to offer flight instruction? Flight instruction will be a noise-intensive operation. Students will have to practice successive takeoffs and landings with low maneuvers to gain licensure. Where will the practice flying occur? Will the repeated takeoff and landings be here at the Gateway Airport? And have there been any noise considerations for these operations? And please, before you say yes to this contract, you owe it to the public to thoroughly explain why we as a community need this and exactly how it will impact us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tasha Lingus, I live in Hyannis Park. My family and I own 7 homes there, and we are totally opposed to more noise and pollution. It's bad enough, I think, in prior meetings, we've seen the pollution going into the creek and everyone's passing the buck and saying, no, it's not us, no, it's not us. You people do not live underneath, looking at the numbers on those airplanes, smelling the emissions, the contrails, everything else. And I think it's very, it's unacceptable. So my little entourage say no. And I just wonder where the public comment was prior to this meeting, and how come no one was notified, and does the public get to vote on this? Or do you 2, 4, 6, 8, however many people there are you the ones going to be underneath these helicopters, as we have been underneath these airplanes that get increasingly worse and louder and louder and larger.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Okay. We can close public comment now?
Yes.
Motion to close public comment, or is that needed?
Or is there, would it be after?
What about your rationale?
Presentation first.
We'll do the,
Okay.
I thought we could speak again after the presentation.
They already said we could.
Oh,
All right, we'll allow a
so
few.
it's not closed.
Okay. Commission's response to public comment? Okay, hearing none. Move to report from the subcommittees. Finance subcommittee, please. Commissioner Wild.
The Finance Subcommittee met on November 7th via Zoom. The meeting was called to order at 8:35 a.m. Commissioners Wild, Flores, and Bailey were all present via Zoom. There was no old business, new business. FIN 1123-1, review and approve change order number 3 for design and reconstruct the runway 624 project. Since this is going to be in this sequence of the things I'll be talking about are all things that are going to be talked about at this meeting, we did review all of it, and we voted to move it to the full commission meeting. FIN 1123-2, again, it's a review and approve change order number 4 for design and reconstruct runway 624 project. Again, we voted to move it to the from the subcommittee for a discussion and possible approval at this meeting. Won't go into detail since it'll be rehashed here again. Review Finance 1123-3. Review and approve change order number 7 for the Agport Operations and T-Hangar Replacement Project. Again, we discussed it, we were informed about the status of the activities that were going on. The agenda item was voted to be moved for consideration and approval at this meeting. FIN 1123-4, review and approve commercial aeronautical activity permit by and between Cape Cod Gateway Airport and William Jenkins Helicopter Holdings LLC, DBA Cape Heli Tours. Again, I know Katie will be doing a discussion on all of the details that were presented to us, so you get to hear what was presented to us. Plus, I'm sure additional rationale, but based on what we heard at that meeting, we voted to approve it for movement to the full commission. We received the financial updates as part of the regular updates that we receive, and reviewed project updates on the status of all of the projects that were going on. Those things will be discussed at this meeting. The meeting was adjourned at 9:40.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any questions on the Finance Subcommittee? Comments? Infrastructure and Marketing, Commissioner Beerworth, have you covered that, or?
Sure.
They always put your name first. Where's Joe?
I'm right here. That's okay.
Joe, you can hit.
Yeah, Commissioner DeGeorge, welcome back.
Thank you. Infrastructure Marketing Subcommittee met on Tuesday, November 7th at 10:30 in the morning via Zoom. Commissioners that attended were DeGeorge, Bearworth, and Gio were all present. We had no unfinished business. The new business was the IN 1123-1 Airport Roundtable Update, which Norm has already spoken about, and you'll hear more about that at the full commission here tonight. The other things we reviewed were the all project updates, which will be updated by Chris tonight. And other than that, it was kind of a short meeting. The meeting was adjourned at 11:20 in the morning.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Quick note for everybody here. Almost everything that appears on our monthly agenda previously goes through one of these two subcommittees. Those are publicly posted meetings. So they are available to you. Mostly they're held on Zoom, but they are publicly posted. And a lot of the information that was given to the subcommittees before they forward it to the full commission is available to you, and that would have been a couple of 3 weeks ago. So just a reminder, the subcommittee meetings mean something. Okay,
If I
old
can
business.
add their script real quick, the subcommittee meetings are always the first Tuesday of the month, is when and they're in the morning, and we post them on the town's website.
So there was an opportunity, and there will be in the future, if you pay attention to those subcommittee meetings, you can get in and on before they hit us. Old business, there is none, and given the tenor of the meeting tonight, and for the convenience of all, what I'm going to recommend and do is move COM 1123-5. And I'll move it. COM 1123-5. This is the oops, excuse me one. Yeah, got the big one here. This is approval of commercial aeronautical activity permit by and between Cape Cod Gateway Airport and William Jenkins Helicopter Holdings LLC, doing business as Cape Heli Tours. The motion is to approve that commercial activity permit between Cape Cod Gateway Airport and William Jenkins LLC, DBA Cape Cod Heli Tours. The sponsor is the Finance Subcommittee, may be acted upon. May I have a second, please?
Seconded.
Okay, discussion. Katie, you wanna?
Sure. So first of all, I'm Katie Service, I'm the airport manager. With me here is Matt Elia, the assistant airport manager. For those of you who haven't been at these meetings, Sue Kennedy, the executive secretary, and Chris Botswick, who is our senior project manager for all the projects that we're working on. Thank you for coming here tonight. I wanted to go through the rationale. I did respond to some of the questions that were already asked here tonight. Some of them I might have to get back to you on, but I tried to respond to most of those that were already previously asked by Town Councilor Leckie, and I think it will respond to some of your questions that you had here tonight. So let me get through this and then we'll go into further conversation. So, as you know, the airport's use is varied, just like any other airport within this region. We have everything from year-round residences that use this airport on a regular basis with either their private aircraft or chartered aircraft. Employees transition from this airport to the islands, to Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket for work. We have a lot of contractors that utilize that service, so electricians, plumbers, general contractors that do not live on the islands but are working on the islands, they'll transition from this airport over there. In fact, Marine Home Centers, who you may be familiar with, they carry about 1,200 of their employees annually from this airport and 2 of their aircraft to have employees go over to the islands to work in their facilities on the islands. We transport a lot of doctors and nurses to the islands. We have a lot of military that uses the airport. We have a lot of hospitality industry workers that do not live on the islands, they live on the mainland. They transition during summer activity and the seasonal activity over to the islands. Medical evacuation is a near daily occurrence here at the airport. Boston MedFlight and other life services provide service to this airport. We have a lot of summer residents who pay taxes year-round to have property on the Cape and the islands that operate to and from this airport on a regular basis, and then our general visitors to the region. Obviously, you've just heard in the news that American Airlines is coming to the airport, so that's providing additional commercial service to our community, and yes, in addition to JetBlue and Cape Air that already offers flight services here. So to continue to provide various activity at the airport, we have been approached by Mr. William Jenkins. He is a sublessor of Aloft Aviation. Bill is with us today. To operate a helicopter tour operation and potential helicopter flight instruction at the airport. Mr. Jenkins has submitted his aeronautical activity permit to the airport, which is what's on the docket here today. He has received his business license from the town of Barnstable. He has received his letter of authorization to do this type of activity from the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration. He has insurance coverage for his operation, naming both Aloft Aviation, who he's subleasing from, and the airport as additionally insured. And Mr. Jenkins will be operating his operation as Helicopter Holdings LLC, doing business as Cape Heli Tours. Helicopter operations are not new to this airport. Many of you have spoken to that. In fact, we have an existing helicopter tour operator who is here today, thank you for coming, with Cape and Vineyard Helicopter Tours. Our helicopter operations, and we looked at the number of operations from January 1 to today. We have about 850 operations that have occurred during that time frame, just in this calendar year. Operations include medical evacuation helicopters, military flights, corporate flights. We've had CVS, Raytheon, Charles Schwab, who come in here quite often in their helicopters. Existing flight tour operation, Cape and Vineyard Helicopter Tours LLC. So when the comments were raised by whether or not we need to have a public process for this type of activity, I reached out immediately to the FAA and to MassDOT Aeronautics to make sure that I wasn't missing something, to make sure that we were following the process as intended. In correspondence with the FAA, with the planners over at in Burlington, they indicated that the airport is not obligated to go through a review and approval process for this type of operation. In fact, the FAA state that if we were to require an operator to go through a public outreach process to operate at this airport, we would be in violation of our grant assurances number 22 and 23. Those grant assurances are put in place as a constitutional right for the flying public to be able to operate at any public use airport. So granted, I won't go into too many details, but the two grant assurances, one is economic non-discrimination, meaning that the airport cannot discriminate about for any aeronautical activity that wants to occur at a facility. We have to allow that. And then grant assurances number 23 is exclusive rights. So basically, we cannot say one operator can operate, but another one cannot. We have to allow for equal opportunity, just as if you're going through a procurement process for any town entity, you have to give equal opportunity for any entity to want to engage in that commerce. The same is true here. The FAA has stipulations and grant assurances that require the airport to follow those grants, those rights, and to make sure that those rights are implemented. So the FAA stated that the airport must allow the company to operate and to treat them in the same manner as any other operator. I know, Kristen, I think you mentioned having a current operator doing business now today. What does that mean for another operator coming in doing flights? We have to allow that, right? We have to give that opportunity. In that past calendar year, we've had about 50 operations that were conducted by that operator, about 56 from my count when I looked at it today. But we do have to allow for that opportunity, so that would answer that one as well, that question. In correspondence with MassDOT Aeronautics, they're the ones that control the 36 public use airports in the state. They indicated that the airport cannot not allow operation of this entity to come onto the airport. We have to allow it to meet our grant assurances. And then in correspondence with our on-call environmental team, we just wanted to make sure that we were covering all the bases. This type of activity doesn't trip environmental processes that we have to follow. In other words, the environmental process that we're following now for the runway extension that we're contemplating, that trips an environmental review process that we must follow. This type of activity does not. So in going through all of that, I wanted to go through some of the other questions that were asked in hopes of answering your questions that you had. One of the questions posed to us were, are there proposed route maps for helicopter tours? The answer to your question is no. Right now, we currently do not have that. Helicopter routes do exist within the country, but they're mostly at congested cities. So right now, Baltimore, Washington, Boston, Chicago, Dallas, Detroit, Houston, Los Angeles, and New York are the only cities that have helicopter routes that are embedded within the plan for congested areas. This area does not have that. Additionally, the tour operator would be currently, right now, using our current noise abatement approach and departure procedures that are currently used for fixed wing aircraft that operate out of this airport. That's currently what we have in place. The next question was, how long will each tour last? Under an hour is the estimate that we were given by Mr. Jenkins. How many operations per day, that's really unknown at this time. It depends on the customer base. Cape and Vineyard Helicopter Tours conducted 112 operations, which is a landing and a takeoff. That equates to about 56 flights that were done from January 1 to today. Just to give you an example of how many operations in almost a year that we might be talking about. In regards to seasonal or non-seasonal, will this be a seasonal or year-round operation? It would be a year-round operation. Are special procedures being developed for arrival and departure of this helicopter? Right now, we haven't contemplated any special type of procedures that would be in place, but that is something that I'm sure the commission would be willing to talk about for in the future as we look at these helicopter operations, especially with the comments that were made in regards to flight instruction that may occur. We do have a pilot shortage within the industry. There's a pilot and mechanic shortage to the tune that is affecting a lot of just in general the national airspace system. So we have a lot of events that we put on that are for aviation education to ensure that students know that they have opportunities to get into the aviation industry. It doesn't have to be a pilot, but obviously we have pilots that are represented within that mix so that we do promote that. The next question was, what villages will be overflown? So the villages that are currently that actively see aircraft flying over them today would be the same villages that would be affected by the helicopter routes. How far will the helicopter fly? I believe there's a 25 nautical mile limit to where the helicopter can fly, so that would be, Bill, you might be able to jump in here, but that would be from Hyannis maybe out to the bridges or Hyannis to Woods Hole type of
Statute
route.
miles into
Statute.
Wellfleet Harbor, that's the limit for an operator based out of here.
Thank you. What altitudes will the helicopter be flying at? To meet FAA requirements, at least 500 feet is required. Somewhere around 600 feet is where the helicopter would be flying, anticipated. Will there be any noise analysis? So the type of helicopter that is being proposed, and I have a graphic I can show you. I know it's hard, Matt, would you be able to just turn that a little bit so they can see it, if you mind? Thank you. So the aircraft up here is the Sikorsky aircraft. That Boston Medflight has a helicopter, I say aircraft, helicopter that they use. That's a common helicopter that we see here on the airfield. Additionally, we have the EC-145. It's another helicopter that Boston Medflight uses, but it's not only Boston Medflight. I'm just giving you an example of the helicopters that commonly fly here. These two helicopters, just so you're aware, are the helicopters that were used in our noise analysis and our noise study for the master plan. Because they are the loudest helicopters that we have operating and the most frequent helicopters that we have operating on the airfield. So those were the helicopters that we used in our noise analysis. So the contours that were developed are based on these two helicopters. The R-44, which is the helicopter that's being contemplated for these operations, there's a picture of it right there. The R-44 is a small helicopter, a pilot and 3 passengers, I believe, can be in that helicopter. So from a noise standpoint, it is much different from the 2 helicopters that you see up here and what our noise contours were based off of. So we didn't contemplate doing any additional noise studies since this aircraft is much quieter signature than the 2 aircraft that we already have in our noise fleet mix. That is all that I have right now for rationale. I'm going to turn it back over to the commission chair and the vice chair to see if we have any further comments or questions.
I'm going to allow 3 or 4 minutes, 5 minutes max, not per person, but if you have additional questions, this would be your time.
I want to start by saying it's distressing that you don't have established tour paths to offer all of us. And that means, I'm guessing, that these helicopters are going to be flying everywhere. or Ken?
So I'm just gonna pull up our flight paths, it might be easier to discuss from this. If you don't mind, Chairman.
Go right
Okay.
ahead, please.
So you can just turn it, I will try my best to see it from this angle. These are our flight routing that we have for our Fly Friendly, Fly Quiet program that we have in place. It's a voluntary program. We do ask that our pilots abide by this program. The lease that we have currently with Aloft Aviation has an article in the lease that identifies that they agree to abide by our noise abatement procedures and abide by them as much as they can. Any sublessor that takes on, that is a sublessor of an existing lessee, must abide by the same requirements in protocol. So we do have that in place. We're willing to talk a little bit more about, what helicopter routes would look like. I know in speaking to, or Matt in speaking to Mr. Jenkins, I think the routing is thought of, you would go north towards, if you were to go north of Cape Cod, towards the beaches, or Sandy Neck, thank you, towards Sandy Neck, and then head out towards the canals. Or if you were on a southern route, it would be south of the airport and then head out towards Woods Hole. So for a helicopter to operate in this scenario, typically the helicopters are coming in. Oftentimes they'll either come right into the ramp area, they'll fly right in and hover taxi to the ramp, or they'll fly in over the numbers of the runway environment, then hover taxi to where they're parking. So this is the routing that we typically require, that's arrivals, and then this is for departures. Any?
So the island tours, which
Yes.
would affect Hyannis Park. Those are gonna come over us at what height?
600 feet.
At least 600 feet. That's what's being proposed right now, and that is within FAA legal requirements for height.
Killing us.
That's on our website too. Is that
That is on the
That's on the website. It's under our noise page.
What is the decibel noise level of a helicopter at 600 feet?
So I looked into, I didn't ask that specific question. I looked into what the noise signature of the R44 could possibly be.
At what height?
I'm not sure. So I did ask our environmental team those questions, and I asked them to provide me with the noise signature for the two helicopters that are in our study for our noise contours, as well as the R44. I didn't have that information before this meeting. However, even if you Google it, like it's on average between 90 and 100 decibels. It depends on where they are, what the altitude they are at.
I bought the stage 3 I gave it to Matt just a little while ago. 81 decibels for this aircraft at the most,
The 44 one?
on the 44.
At what height?
Yeah, what distance?
500 feet AGL above the ground, 600 feet.
So the ground is gonna be 80, you're gonna hear 80
It's-
decibels on the ground?
It's based upon a takeoff profile that goes out a certain distance and height, and there are little microphones along the way, and it's all measured.
On the
However they do it with the mathematical formulas. But the lady that brought that up, obviously was doing some good studying, by the way. Part 36 will give you everything you need to know.
Mr. Jenkins, would you just introduce yourself for a second from the back of
Sorry,
the
I'm Bill
row there?
Jenkins, Cape president and retired United pilot, just decided to get back to work.
Nope, this is good.
So
One more.
I just wanted to make a, did you want to say something?
I wanted to ask her, how can it be that you can't say no to anybody, a helicopter company or an airline that wants to come here, you can't say no? I'm
We-
confused by that
we
statement.
It's a
cannot.
constitutional right.
Yeah.
So you could have 30 helicopter companies here
Good.
and 30 airlines?
It is, but would it be feasible? Probably not. However, we
You can't
cannot
say no.
we cannot discriminate against. We have to allow for any operator that wants to operate from this airfield, if they can legally do it and it's within their limits, they can operate from this airfield. That's why it's identified as a public use airport. It allows for that, for transport and aviation commerce to take effect, to happen. So we have to allow for
Go ahead.
I just, picking up on that thread, I do think that there's a misunderstanding about this term rights. Certainly an applicant has got a right, whether it's to apply for helicopter flights or a right to develop land. That does not mean they have a right to apply, they have a right to meet all the rules and regulations. That does not mean it's an automatic acceptance. I can't imagine that any federal regulation would allow that, because that means local rule, there'd be no reason for you guys to be here if that was the case. Especially if they meet all the onesies and twosies of the rules and regulations, and there's a serious safety issue, or there's a serious health issue. That means you can't do anything about it. I think there's just a too generous interpretation of this term rights. That means local government has absolutely no say over any of this, and that doesn't sound normal. This is not the gulag. I mean, we still have the right to object, and you all have the right to object too. You have to listen to the citizens. As one of the presenters said, you're supposed to be representing us. There's no automatic right to do anything. He's an automatic right, anyone's got an automatic right to apply. That does not mean he's got an automatic right to acceptance. I just don't believe that.
So if I could just respond to that real quickly. We have a right and obligation to not only respond to the community, but we also have a right and an obligation to respond to the users of this airfield. So we're kind of sitting in a place where we have to satisfy both entities, that we have to be able to provide adequate access to our facilities by an aviation entity that wants to operate here. But we also know that we have a community that we represent in the same respect. And sometimes it puts us in a hard place. But it puts us in a situation where it's not always pleasant for both parties. So we are trying our best to make sure that we're balancing that approach. So Linda had brought up, can you look at these routes and look at opportunities in our existing procedures that we have in place that I showed you here that are for helicopters. Yeah, we haven't looked at that. We're willing to look at that. That's not a problem. We're willing to take a look at that. But when we go back to the rights, we are obligated by grant assurances and by the Federal Aviation Administration to do what we can to support the aviation community. And the reason why you talked about, town rule, the reason why that is in place and it's a constitutional right is because there are many communities that have dealt with this in the past, and the FAA has the rights over what happens with aviation. That is under their umbrella. So they say that these are the things that you have to offer to the aviation community, and these are the rights that they have. And we, as an airport, cannot block those rights.
But you do have to balance. You do have to balance the promise of the community with the supposed rights of the applicant.
We do.
So how are our concerns being balanced? I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
We have heard you, believe me. We
But
appreciate
I still would like the question answered, how are the rights of the community being balanced? I don't hear any balancing at all. Zero.
As a public use airport, anything that can fly in and out of here safely and legally, basically, is welcome. We cannot say no. It is part of the national air transportation system. It's that simple. I mean, it sounds, but it's that simple. We cannot. One last.
I have a question then. So your flight path, that's suggested,
They're voluntary flight.
they're voluntary. So if a helicopter tour decides they want to spend their whole hour flying around a certain 10-acre parcel, i.e. the lake along our shore, they don't have any guidelines or they don't have any regulations from you as to where they can be flying. They can spend their whole hour just zipping back and forth over the lake, the beach, one location for that whole hour.
I think one of the things that we have to be conscious of is the pilots that are operating these aircraft are operating them within their legal parameters that are set forth by their license. So they are operating them within limits that the FAA establishes for them. so 500 feet over populated areas. So I think most of the pilots here that operate here are conscious that they have to live and operate amongst communities. You know, is everybody going to follow the rules? Perhaps not, but the vast majority of them do, because they're aware of that. But they still are following the flight rules and operating within their limits according to the FAA.
And is flying over land 500 feet minimum the same as flying over the beach, the lake, the water? Or can they go lower?
It's 500 feet, so they cannot go lower. It's 500 feet over populated areas.
How is that enforced?
It's, you know, enforced, I would say, by air traffic control, if they're under air traffic control rules. Most pilots don't want to lose their license, so they're probably not going to dip below those altitudes. So if I'm a pilot flying a helicopter, altitude is my friend as well. So, you know, it's within the pilot's right, but they're going to follow the regulations. And pilots know that. They got their license, they have to be tested. They're tested on a biannual basis as well.
Anything that when they are within a 5-mile radius of the airport, they're in direct contact with the air traffic controllers in the tower.
Right, but beyond 5 miles, they're not.
They could be talking to anybody or not if they're, but that's okay. I mean, that's,
And so the town has, the town of Barnstable, the town of Yarmouth, we all have noise ordinances within our towns. So if, as a resident, we call into our town a complaint of a noise issue, they're going to contact the airport.
call us directly. We have a line.
So I guess hopefully, since you guys aren't gonna obviously do anything in concern to all of ours, hopefully the gentleman who's planning this is going to have listened to us and have understood the last thing we want is them flying all around over our homes all summer long for the jollies of somebody else.
Some
Like,
tourists.
leave the airport, go out to sea, spend an hour out there and come back.
And I'll just comment.
It's an invasion of privacy almost
Yeah,
to some
sure is.
It is.
point too, when, for, like, do any of you live on the water?
I lived on the lake
I
for
do,
20
and I
years.
live right where the DC-3 from Cape Cod Airfield turns from Mystic Lake over to Middle Pond. So I go through exactly the same thing that you're talking
But
about.
an airplane takes off and leaves.
So does a helicopter.
They can hover.
It can, but that's not the purpose of the tour.
It's like being forced.
I will mark your word on that, sir.
Please do.
I will,
But,
I
you
will
know,
keep that.
I lived on the lake for 20 years and you would have loved it because I flew a seaplane for years out of my backyard.
My neighbor used to fly a seaplane,
Yeah.
no problem.
No problem.
Come and go.
Then why do you think this is a problem? That's all.
Because it's a tour and I envision sightseeing
Okay.
over our lands.
Skilled professional isn't going to do that. Any other comments from the commission? Everybody's had a chance to listen.
One more, could we have another public comment?
I have a question actually for Katie and for Mr. Jenkins. What are you forecasting the number of trips out of the airport?
So we don't know exactly how many trips would be operating. We can only use an example of an existing scenic tour operator that has conducted from January 1 to today, 56 flights. So
So where's the demand?
it's regardless of where the demand is, we as an airport have to allow the operation to exist and take place.
Will this company own one or multiple helicopters?
Mr. Jenkins?
I'm the bad guy in the hot seat today.
How many helicopters?
One currently, but would like more. But I understand exactly what everybody's saying with the noise. And the biggest thing is altering the routes. Going over one place all the time, that's annoying. Same noise, I understand that completely. I live on the departure path out of Coast Guard Base, and I hear the AH-60s coming out of there. They're very loud, they're very low. I get the program here. That's why I propose maybe we all agree to stay high, the other operator also. You can track our altitudes from flightaware.com, and you can watch the aircraft, the end numbers, and you can see just what we're doing. And then maybe, as the gentleman said, you can call them with a noise complaint if it's bothering you, or we fly over you too low. But bear in mind, takeoff and landing does not count. The idea, take off, you get to altitude, move, keep going.
So how long is that period between takeoff and when you have to reach
500
altitude?
feet, well, 600 ms, it takes 60 seconds
And you're moving
at 60 knots initially,
and
and then you accelerate typically to 100 knots. So
the
you're
people,
moving,
so the people by the airport are obviously going to
they're
get
taking
louder.
a beating,
They're
anybody
getting
near an
louder.
airport, oh sure. But the idea is these routes, maybe the helicopter people can alter them some way. Find a way in and out. We just can't be landing with tailwinds. And of course, ATC constraints are major. We will always abide by them. But there might be, maybe there's a way to change those for the helicopters in and out of the airport to really find a way in and out.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, I just had a concern as far as what the tour is involving. If it's the Kennedy compound, is that what's so interesting? If that's the case, Lewis Bay is gonna get creamed with all these
Well,
helicopters.
typically you go by these places. That's the Kennedy compound. Now we're moving over Osterville. And now we're coming up on Woods
Okay.
Hole. There are the ships who make the right turn up to the canal, Buzzards Bay. There's the west side of the canal, the
Okay,
bridges.
so it's not
No, you're not
lengthy time anywhere situation.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you all very much. We will now close public comment. And commissioners, you've heard, the motion is on the table. We know what we're dealing with. We are an airport. Any comments, Brad, Norm, Joe, John, Wendy? Okay, we'll call a question. All in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously. We will work real hard with the operators to make sure that things run just as smoothly and complying legally and socially. But the operation will go, and it will go with our concern to make sure it's done right.
Yes.
We thank you all for believe me, we thank you all for being here.
We're gonna have a sit-in like in this.
Thank you, everybody.
But what requirements we have, requirements are not regulations.
Good night. The
It's like drinking from a fire hose.
My friends.
So good, I'm a quick learner.
Good luck.
We're just abiding by what the ethics.
Very sweet.
But seriously,
I guess that's like
Mr. Willard, pleasure to know you, sir. Yeah, sounds good. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay.
I do too, so. I bet you do, so nobody does it down here. North.
I appreciate it.
We're continuing the public hearing.
Sorry.
All right, back to normal. We're going to go back to the order here, and that would be COM 1123-1 Airport Roundtable Updates. Surprise.
Yep, surprise. All right. So just wanted to go over the 2023 airport roundtable that I went to in October 25th through the 27th. It was in Lexington, Kentucky. The airport roundtable series, just information for all of you, is a series of intimate airport and airline meetings The maximum number of attendees is usually capped at 50. They host 2 per year and at least 1 international event annually. The events that I have been to have been very, having a more intimate affair with only 50 people allows you to contact and talk to these airlines more one-on-one over a 2.5-day period versus some of the larger conferences that we've spent money on and have gone to, which are the Jumpstart event that we go to. That only allows you 15 minutes to talk to an airline if that airline wants to talk to you. So you have to make pre-arrangements and ask for an invitation to speak to various airlines. This event allows for more open opportunity for those conversations and discussion. So the airlines that were present at this conference were Allegiant Airlines, American Airlines, Breeze Airways, Delta Airlines, Southwest, Sun Country, and United. So that's a pretty significant number of airlines that are available for either airport marketing teams or airport managers to speak to. The vast majority of people from the airports that attend these are typically airport marketing individuals. There's probably a handful of airport managers, and typically it's on the level or size of airport like our airport. So I took 9 pages of notes. I'm not going to go over all 9 pages. I'm going to hit the highlights. There is nothing for us to approve here with this item. It's just to give you an update. And I will provide this document to you afterwards. So usually at these meetings, first they give kind of a synopsis of what's happening in the industry. So they talked a little bit about profit margins, airline stock prices, just to kind of say this is the issues of the day. They also talked about an oddity that was happening in 2023 where the seasonal markets that airlines typically pick up were less popular this year in 2023 than they have been in the past, which is typically that's the strongest market for most airlines. This is no different from last year in regards to airline cost. So last fall when I went to this conference, they talked about pilot payments, contracts with their pilots, the cost increases that are associated with aviation fuel. Those remain the same for 2023. So pilot costs, most of the airlines have agreed to their new union contracts, and all of those labor rates are much higher than what they used to be before, especially with the pilot shortages. They want to maintain what they have on staff for the pilots, so they've increased their labor and wages for all of those. Flight attendant costs are on the rise. There was discussion of future strikes by numbers of flight attendants for wage negotiations, so we'll have to see how that plays out. Fuel cost, obviously with the Middle East conflicts, global demand is declining. Oil prices could decline significantly if peace returns, but right now it's still an unknown, so the airlines have to account for that in their operations. They're also still dealing with supply chain issues, so maintenance expenses are high because the supply costs and supply chain issues have increased the prices across the board. In Washington, New York, and Chicago, the slotted airports, obviously they've had some problems there. In New York, you heard about problems that they had with air traffic control and not having enough staff on hand to be able to operate in those slotted areas. Because of that, they allowed the airlines to reduce their operations to those areas by 10% without getting a penalty. They're required to fly those routes if they seek a slot at those airports. So they allowed them for one time only for a decrease by 10% in those operations. We then went on to each airline gave a synopsis of where they are and what they're doing in their business. Again, I'm only going to highlight the ones that have potential to affect this airport. Allegiant Airlines discussed where they are. Nothing really from Allegiant would really affect us directly. They talked about just having appropriate lease terms for airports. They went into some detail about that. American Airlines got up, they announced their network growth, including their growth here in the summer of 2024 to Hyannis. But they also have Caribbean winter service. 42 destinations were added to their route structure. 11 destinations, they're the sole carrier going to those locations. Winter growth, they are increasing their activity in Miami and Phoenix with both Caribbean and Latin America flights and operations. Miami, their expansion is 380 plus peak day departures. In Phoenix, they have 6% growth in seat availability. Their summer growth for 2024, they are seeing an uptick in their European routes out of Chicago, Philadelphia, and DFW. One of the nice things to think about for that is potential connection in the future for Hyannis to one of those locations to get those European travel options available right here from Cape Cod. They talked about their service from Chicago to Venice, Philadelphia, and DFW to Nice, Naples, Italy, Copenhagen, and then their domestic growth with DC and LaGuardia flights here at Hyannis. And they continue to see growth in their southeastern market, which a lot of Cape Codders do fly south for the winter. If you look at all 4 quarters across the calendar year, Florida is a big market for our Cape and Island residents that live here year-round. And they are continuing to grow their market in the southeast, which is good for us as well. The next airline up was Breeze Airways. Breeze talked about their leisure travel, their low-cost carrier. They typically go into communities that have high community demand, but something that a legacy carrier won't operate in. That is their model. They use E190 and E195 aircraft, similar to what JetBlue is using, and they're transitioning, and they also use A220 aircraft. They, as JetBlue is doing, they're going to cancel the E190 service, and they're transitioning all to A220 aircraft. So you can see that upgauging, those airlines that are upgauging to larger aircraft for their operations. They seemed pretty interested in the airport. It's a niche market that they would typically look at. They do have a less than daily service that they provide out of Connecticut to Florida. So they were interested to see the numbers of community members that are interested in going to Florida from here. We gave them 2018 numbers. We don't have updated numbers yet, but 2018 before the pandemic, we still had a strong number of community residents, year-round residents that fly to Florida. So they were interested in, their interest was piqued by that information, especially when the top 4 airports are Florida airports from Hyannis. They want to continue their growth in 2024. They are currently not in Massachusetts, but they are interested in that option. And speaking with Delta Airline, when they did their overview, they're looking to capture more leisure travel in the winter to Florida, Arizona, and the Caribbean. Obviously, for this area, most interest for us would be Florida. In 2024 and 2025, they're going to focus on their small market communities, which is good for us. Their regional jet capabilities, although they're shrinking those capabilities, they are still looking at seasonal markets that would be ideal for them to deploy those types of operations. Hyannis would be an ideal candidate. They're trying to defend their southeastern market, obviously from other carriers, and they're focusing on market growth in the southeast going to Florida. Southwest Airlines didn't have too much that would offer us. Neither did Sun Country. In looking at United Airlines, of their regional jets, Hyannis could be an optimal market for them and for a good location for United to base some of where those regional jets are going. They have the highest passenger numbers of Delta and American for services to major hub cities, but they are reducing their regional jet market. So again, everybody is upgauging, but they are still looking for adequate places to do some type of seasonal service using those regional markets. They're not getting rid of all of their fleet, but they're significantly reducing their fleets. So that's really what I have in a nutshell. Obviously, I was able to connect with the folks from American. I was able to connect both with United and Breeze during that meeting. The next roundtable meeting is in February, I believe. I'm going to take a look at the airlines that might be going to that meeting and see if I can get in on that and have some more conversations with these same entities. Any questions or comments?
Florida calls.
Just a comment, I commend the continuous activity to try and get folks together. That's a never-ending tracking strategy that we need to employ as well as support as a commission. If they don't hear from us, they're not coming.
Right, exactly, and I mean, just case in point with Breeze, the gentleman that was there was not the same gentleman that I've met in the past. But it was the first time that I had somebody really sit and listen and want my numbers and say, oh, that's very interesting about your Florida operations.
Yeah, it's not something that's gonna happen right away, but rather over time. You gotta keep
Breeze is interesting.
Yes.
Because they've been expanding and they've got some interesting routes.
Yes.
Okay, well, thanks, that's very good.
Thank you all. I apologize for the flagging you took.
No, quite.
Thank you for being
Please
here.
speak up, anything I can do to keep the noise down.
Well,
Thank you for your
thank you.
support, all of you.
Thanks for being here.
Sir. Sir?
Good luck.
Alrighty, all right,
Thank
Katie,
you.
thanks,
Good to
alrighty,
meet
we'll see you soon.
Yep.
Matt?
Okay, continuing with the agenda. Norm, would you read this next one, please?
1123-2. COM 1123-2. Motion to approve change order number 3 to the contract bind between Cape Cod Gateway Airport and Lawrence Lynch Corporation in the amount of $6,187.04. We couldn't round off the pennies. For the additional modification to the design and reconstruction of runway 624. The revised contract amount is $17,039,635.15. The sponsor is the Finance Subcommittee, and it may be acted on at this meeting.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Discussion.
Sure, I am going to hand off the change orders to Chris. Chris will have the rationale for all three.
Thank you,
Chris?
Katie. Thank you. This is change order number 3 for the runway 624 project. So after we installed the threshold lights to the on the project, we realized they were in conflict with the approach lights. Basically, the height of one light is in conflict with another. So in order to change that, we're going to raise the height of the threshold lights. So we'll go from 14-inch lights to 30-inch lights. That'll solve the problem, and we'll be able to see all 8 of the threshold lights from the runway. We had the price come in at $6,187, which was 16% under what the estimate was for that. And this is going to be split between the FAA at 90%, MassDOT at 5%, and the airport at 5%. The airport share for this is $309.35. Any questions on that change order?
Call the question, all in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Thank you. John, you want to read
Yes, this
next
is COM 1123-3. It's approval of change order number 4 for design and reconstruction of runway 6-24 project specifically. The motion is to approve change order number 4 to the contract bind between the Cape Cod Gateway Airport and Lawrence Lynch Corporation in the amount of $54,955.01 for additional modification to the design and reconstruction of runway 6-24 project. The revised contract amount is $17,094,590.16. This is sponsored by the Finance Subcommittee and may be acted upon at this meeting.
Second, please.
Seconded.
Discussion. Chris?
All right, thank you. This is change order number 4 for the runway 624 project. This was a change order of opportunity. During the 624 project, we replaced all the lights and regulators for 624. In doing that, we realized the regulator for runway 1533 is in desperate need of repair. It's over 20 years old, and it did fail in the summer leading up to the 624 project. Since we were mobilized and had electricians in the field, this was an opportunity for us to utilize those electricians to replace that regulator and to get it funded 80% by MassDOT, 20% by the town. So our share for this is $10,991 is our share for that. And now when we're done with this installation, we'll have all new regulators for all runways at this airport. Any questions I can answer for this?
Any questions, comments? Call the question, all in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Thank you. And last but not least, this guy, number 4. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. This is COM 1123-4, approval of change order number 7 for the airport operations and T-hangar replacement project. The motion is to approve change order number 7 to the contract binding between the Cape Cod Gateway Airport and TRAC Track Builders, Inc. in the amount of $6,638.50 for additional modifications to the airport operations, upgrade and T-hangar replacement project. The revised contract amount is $5,527,973.28. Fenwick McCraven Architecture has provided a corresponding credit to their contract to cover these costs. Sponsor is the Finance Subcommittee, and it may be acted upon at today's meeting.
Second, please.
Second.
Have a second discussion, Chris?
Yes, sir. This is for change order number 7 for the T-hangar and ARP Ops project. Specifically, this change order addresses the T-hangar. There was a fire department connection that was needed so the fire department can fight a fire. That building, the new T-hangar, has a fire suppression system. This FDC would connect to that to allow the firefighters to help fight the fire in the building. Went through the permitting process with the location identified on the plans. Along the way, things that were approved, unfortunately, when the inspector came out, wanted it in a different location. So we now have 2 FDCs for that building, so we're very secure and ready to fight any fires. There was a cost associated with that change. Originally, the cost was $18,000. Through negotiations with the contractor and the architect, we were able to bring that down to $13,000. We felt that that was not a cost that we needed to bear. So the architect and the contractor actually split that cost in half between the two.
That's great.
In order to do that, the architecture firm gave us a credit for roughly $6,000, and the contractor took a credit on their end as well. But there is a change order of $6,000 it covers half of it, but we do have a credit coming to offset that. So I know it's a little confusing on how we're doing that with the money. Any questions on that?
Well, I guess not. Anybody? All in favor, signify aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Let's see, we've got an executive session coming. Do we want to go through all the updates?
It's up to you. I can go through the updates first. I can be quick. Most of you have
Quick.
heard it in the infrastructure and the finance
If
subcommittee.
you want to zip through the highlights, go ahead, quick.
Sure.
Okay.
Real quick, for electric aviation, I flew up to Beta of Burlington, Vermont yesterday with Dan Wolf and others from Cape Air. That facility is amazing. I was so impressed. They've been in business for 7 years. They have nearly 1,000 people that work for them, 600 of which are located in the Burlington, Vermont area. They have a campus that spreads across the Burlington Airport. I wish they were here. Have a campus that spreads across the Burlington Airport where they have engineers, flight line mechanics, and developers for their electric aircraft. What I was most impressed with was the culture that they have at that facility. They have a lot of young engineers that work for them. We were in the middle of the meeting and they had engineers that were working on CAD, and one guy had his baby in his arm and was feeding the baby a bottle. It was just a very different atmosphere than I've ever seen before in an office environment. But it was very nice to see because all of these people that work for them were very excited for this new technology. They utilize 3D printing to create the models that they need for the aircraft, so they can work with the 3D models first to make sure that that makes sense going into the development of the aircraft. They will most likely be looking at 2025 for approvals to use their aircraft in a commercial capacity for freight and for flying the mail. That's first and foremost, but they are seeking approvals for commercial passenger service. Very industry-wide, it was very unique layout that they had, very interesting to go there. They have a 110,000 square foot building, manufacturing building, that is designed right now, they're actually physically moving into this building, that is designed to push out, I think 320 aircraft in a year. And then they have plans to double that size of that building. So we will see some significant development of electric aviation right here in New England, which is amazing.
Katie, is that a privately held company?
don't know if Beta is privately held. I'd have to look at that. I can't answer that question right now.
I need to interrupt before you continue because I see up at the top of this page hiding, we skipped Yarmouth representative's report.
Sorry.
And I don't want Chris to feel.
That's okay, Katie can finish her part, we can come back to that.
Okay. I'll be quick, Chris.
That's okay.
We will see next month, WS Development has an update with a lease that they're signing with Panera, who wants to maintain themselves in the facility, so we'll see that on the December agenda. Chris, do you want Chris to go through project updates, or are you good there?
I think we're good.
Okay. Upcoming meetings that you need to be aware of. For the environmental assessment in the airport master plan, we moved the date. It was supposed to be in November. We moved it to December 12th. We have a virtual meeting for the EA at 2 o'clock. The link for that virtual meeting is on our website already. The 6 o'clock in-person meeting is downtown in the James H. Crocker Jr. hearing room. So that is downtown at 6 p.m. same night, December 12th. We are going to focus on topics at hand, the topics that the community has brought up, that are the most prevalent topics to them. We're not going to cover all of the EA, but FAA will be present for that, both meetings, and MassDOT Aeronautics will also be present to answer community questions. On December 18th, we will also have another PFAS meeting. We had a meeting in August that we presented where the airport is on our cleanup and mitigation of PFAS. That was a meeting that was done just at the request of our community. This was the second time that we've done just an open community meeting about PFAS. The next meeting on December 18th meets our requirements for public meeting processes through DEP for the public involvement plan. That will be at 6 p.m. Again, James H. Crocker Jr. hearing room, December 18th. That's all I have for quick updates. So I don't know if you have any questions.
Any questions for Katie on the updates? Chris?
Actually, some of what she covered were a couple of things I was going to inquire about that indeed were those meetings still scheduled. I guess one of the things that I've had a couple of people ask me about in terms of both the PFAS and also the other FAA, the meeting on the 12th, has to do with the fact there's a lot of research coming out now about the pollution and environmental effect of jet emissions, both, and as I said, I was shocked that one night when I was sitting in the parking lot waiting to get let out when they had no attendant on the gate, and seeing the black cloud coming out of the back end of the jet that was taking off over Hyannis. And so as a consequence, I've started to see, and other people have started questioning me about whether or not any of that information is now required, because they're talking about it as having health consequences to people. And currently, as long as we're not to the electric aviation portion yet, then clearly some of those questions, I think, are going to continue to come up from people. So that was the one thing. I didn't know if that topic was going to be addressed in either of these meetings at all.
Yes, so air quality will be discussed.
Okay.
There will be a representative there. And
On the
we'll
12th?
On the 12th.
Okay.
And we'll also have the FAA will be there as well. The environmental planner for the FAA will be there, and she'll be able to respond to some air quality questions as well.
Okay, because that was one of the big things that was coming up, and I just wanted to confirm about those meetings. The other thing is, I'm not surprised, to tell you the truth, by the attendance by people, because I think that one of the things that scares people, certainly in my neighborhood and all, is the fact that these noise tracks are voluntary. Also the fact that the noise, the sort of noise reports and all average the noise, whereas what it's like during certain periods of time and certain days is just a nightmare underneath it. When if you average that out over the course of the month or 2 months during a period of season, you don't get the implications of just how bad some of that noise is, and the fact that they really freeform. I mean, you can see planes over the hospital. You can see planes all over the place, depending upon how they choose to fly and at what time. It doesn't matter if it's 6 in the morning or 11 o'clock at night. Obviously, we enjoyed some quiet I think probably because of some federal prohibitions with the president being out on Nantucket in terms of the airspace. So, some of these things, but I think that's a concern when we see the helicopter, at least what people have been saying to me, seeing the helicopter tracks taking some of those, because when you put that on the screen, it shows them very, very clearly coming out through Hyannis Park and down over Lewis Bay. And there's also a concern, and I think somebody raised the question about the Kennedy compound, and that's some of the things that are interesting are down on the south side here. And so I just think, it's going to be, I was very impressed with the fellow leaving just now saying that, he was now more cognizant of concerns about noise, which was impressive on his departure. I just hope the new leaseholder feels the same way. But thank you.
And that was the new leasehold, just so you know.
Was that the new guy
Yes.
leaving? Okay,
In
perfect,
fact,
that's even better.
Both operators of tour operations were
Yeah.
here tonight.
Okay, so the one who left at the end was the
Was
new one?
the new one.
Perfect, okay, good. Well then, then he heard, which
Yes.
is good. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, where are we here? I am really off tonight.
Too much turkey left over in
No,
pumpkin pie.
I wish it were that, Doris. Okay, we are
Yeah.
to this point where pursuant to this is executive session, pursuant to general law, chapter 30 alpha, paragraph 21 sub A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with Teamsters Union Local 59, as a discussion in open session may be detrimental to the bargaining position of the Airport Commission. As chair of the Airport Commission, I move to go, to repeat what I just said, into executive. Yeah, call that the motion.
Second.
Second, and we need a roll call vote, please.
Chairman Griffin?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Flores?
Yes.
Clerk Weil?
Yes.
Commissioner Beerworth?
Yes.
Commissioner Bailey?
Yes.
Commissioner DeGeorge?
Yes.
We are moving into executive session at,
17:18.
thank you.
May I inquire, will you be coming back into open session after this?
We will not.
We will not.
Okay, so the meeting is now basically
This
concluded.
meeting will, oh, I'm sorry, I should have read it. Chris, I'm off tonight. I'll
Sorry,
do that.
thank you.
This meeting will not reconvene in open session after the executive session.